The tachometer on this Dodge Ram pickup was pegged the wrong side of zero and gave erroneous readings while driving. It's a common problem for Dodges for about a decade. So to remove the cluster on this 06 to 08 Ram, dropping it down into first gear, setting the park brake, and then dropping the steering wheel, the steering column itself for easy access to the cluster. Remove the lower trim panel with a couple of screws, and then start working on the upper trim panel, 2 screws on the left, 1 on the right. And then there's a couple on the right side of the cluster just behind the bezel trim piece around the stereo. So I'll take out those 2. And once those are out, that upper trim panel will remove from around the cluster just by pulling on it. Disconnect the connector there. And then once that's out, you'll have access to the 4 screws that hold the cluster in place. Once you get that backed out a little ways, you'll have access to the connectors on the back, using a small screwdriver to press the tabs and free up those connectors. And then once it's out, take it over the bench and blow it off and start the repair of the cluster itself. Remove this back plastic cover over the circuit board, a bunch of Torx screws that come out with the T15 Torx bit, and then these are the 2 problem microchips. The little legs on them vibrate free of the solder on the circuit board, so we're going to touch those with some heat and re-stick them. So I got my soldering iron up pretty hot, got a nice clean tip, and then I'm pressing and holding on each leg for about 3 seconds or so on the upper and lower side. So small and hard to work through, you got to have like a magnifying glass and a nice fine tip soldering iron, and even then you can't really see if you did any good or not, but you kind of trust that adding that heat is going to reattach those little chip legs to the circuit board, and then you can semi-install it and just check it to make sure it works. So setting the cluster in place, plugging it in, and then I'll start the truck and see if that solved the problem. The needles, you don't really care where they're pointing at as you install the cluster. Once you add power, it'll do a gauge sweep and reset them to where they need to go. And then sure enough, the tachometer came back to life and is working as it should. So back in with the screws, reinstall the cluster. And because the power's on, so you can test this, I didn't disconnect the battery. So I have the power on, and that set a few codes on the instrument cluster. You know, like instrument panel miscalibration, fuel level indication errors and whatnot. We'd set a check engine light. So, but it's working as it should. I went in, I cleared the codes, and they didn't reset. Had a clean instrument panel with no engine lights and working as it should. So I hope you found this video useful. I appreciate you watching. I hope you like and subscribe.